The dog always came, until one day he didn't. Some stories don't end, they echo. Ash was the kind of dog who never forgot. A German shepherd trained for search and rescue. He had once pulled children from snowbanks, rubble, floodplains. But years after retirement, Ash led his former handler to a place not marked on any map, and not by scent, but memory. Inside a rusted camper, two boys waited, blankets wrapped tight, eyes wide, not scared, just waiting. "He said you'd come," one murmured. The deeper they looked, the more Maya realized this wasn't an accident. It was a pattern, a cruel game where the children weren't taken to be harmed, but to be found. A man orchestrating disappearances just to test whether anyone cared enough to search. And always, always the same message: the dog will come. The call came through just after 4:17 p.m., breaking the stillness of a slow Saturday shift at the Fairhaven Sheriff's Department. At first, it sounded like a routine wilderness disorientation. Two young boys, off trail. No screams, no crashes, no wildlife report. Just gone. But there was something in the voice of the caller, not the dispatcher, but the father himself. It cracked halfway through the word. Vanished. Like something inside him had already started to break. Sergeant Malcolm Hines was first on the scene. By the time he arrived at Redwood Hollow, a dense, secluded patch of forest that curved along the Columbia Ridge, the father, Aaron Reyes, was already barefoot, shirt torn open by branches, his face a streaked mixture of sweat, dirt, and blood. He stood near a burnt-out campfire ring, his hands trembling. A ranger was trying to calm him down, but he kept pointing toward the trees. "They were just right there," he said again and again. "We were roasting marshmallows, and I went to the truck for the inhaler. Just for a second. Just a second. And when I came back..." His voice didn't finish. His hands did. They moved like he was miming the shape of their absence, a hollow space only a father could feel in his bones. Micah and Jonah Reyes, 10 and 8 years old, had been camping with their father for the weekend. According to neighbors, it was supposed to be a reset after a difficult few months. Their mother had passed away the year prior from a sudden illness. This was Aaron's way of bringing them back to something quieter, something healing, tents, s'mores, stargazing. Now the tent flaps swayed empty in the wind. The fire had gone cold. The sun was already dipping behind the tree line by the time the search began. 6 deputies, 4 rangers, and a handful of volunteers swept the area, moving in wide arcs, calling names that echoed off trunks and disappeared into moss. A chopper was requested, but would take hours. Drones were deployed, but the thick canopy strangled visibility. Micah, the older boy, was reported to be cautious, a rule follower, as his school counselor once put it. Jonah, on the other hand, had mild asthma and a tendency to wander, but not far, his father said. Never far. Deputy Claire Vance found the first sign, a water bottle, lime green with faded superhero stickers. It sat upright on a tree stump, as if carefully placed. It was dry. "You're sure they weren't playing a joke?" someone asked. Aaron's face twisted. "My boys don't do that. Not out here, not since..." He didn't finish. Again, grief has a way of censoring its own story. By 6 p.m., the tone of the search had shifted, from hopeful to haunted, from maybe they're hiding to something's wrong. The woods grew quieter with each shout of their names, and then it happened. Aaron fell to his knees, not from exhaustion, though he had that in full, but from memory. He whispered something that made every deputy stop cold. "I saw boots," he said. "Black boots, at the edge of the trees, just for a second." He looked up, eyes wide, throat dry. "I thought it was a ranger. I thought they were coming to help." Claire knelt beside him, trying to steady his breathing. "When did you see the boots?" "Right before I went to the truck. Just standing there, facing us." "And you didn't see a face?" He shook his head. "Just the boots, like they didn't belong here. Somewhere behind them the wind rustled a fir tree with an almost human sigh. Sergeant Hines stepped aside and called it in. Possible abduction, requesting canine support. Canine retired or not, bring Whitlock. 15 miles away, in a modest one-story home on the edge of Fairhaven, Deputy Maya Whitlock stood on her back porch, a cup of coffee cooling in her hand. Her eyes were fixed on the tree line beyond the backyard. The light was low, that strange golden hour where things shift shapes, and the world doesn't quite know if it's still day or already dreaming. Inside, an old German shepherd named Ash stirred from his spot by the heater. He rose slowly, favoring his right leg, an old injury that ended his service. But his ears twitched, his body stiffened. He walked to the door before the knock even came. Maya opened it. It was dispatch, a missing child call. "I'm not on the active list," she said gently as Ash came to sit beside her. "We know, but they're asking for you. The kids are young. The younger one's got asthma. It's bad out there." There was a silence, not refusal, just history and grief. Maya looked down at Ash. His tail didn't wag. He was already alert. "Okay," she said, "we're coming." She suited up fast, old habits flowing back like tidewater. Tactical boots, the faded green jacket with the K9 always did when the cases were personal. Halfway up the mountain road, a voice came through the radio. "We've got no footprints, no signs of struggle, no tech pings, just air and trees." Then, after a pause, "And something doesn't feel right." Maya didn't reply. She just glanced at Ash, who had sat up straighter, ears sharp, nose twitching. He let out a low whine, deep in his throat. "I know," she whispered. "You feel it too, don't you?" The woods ahead of them waited, still, watching. The forest had grown too quiet. By the time Maya and Ash arrived at the campsite, the light had thinned to a soft gray. The kind of light that didn't belong to any hour. It wasn't evening, not yet, but the trees cast shadows long enough to suggest otherwise. And in that hush, something felt held back, like the world had taken a breath and forgotten to exhale. Search crews moved in measured sweeps. No one spoke unless necessary. Voices traveled differently in woods like these. Not echoing, but swallowed. Sergeant Hines met Maya by the fire pit, nodding once. No broken branches, no drag marks, nothing. His voice was low, like anything louder might tip something off. "It's like they dissolved." Maya scanned the surroundings. The tent still stood open and empty. A pair of sleeping bags lay zipped and untouched. A thermos sat beside a log, half full. 2 plastic mugs, one pink, one orange, still held cocoa gone cold. She crouched near the edge of the fire ring and picked up a charred marshmallow stick. It hadn't even cooled completely. That meant they'd vanished within minutes, possibly less. Ash moved slowly, nose brushing the ground, then veering off. He wasn't bounding like he used to. No more full-throttle charges. Now it was the quiet work, the stillness between breaths. He paused near a set of flat rocks, sniffed a circle of disturbed earth, then let out a sharp huff. Maya followed his gaze. Nothing. No prints, no broken underbrush, no disturbance except that eerie absence of disturbance. The unnatural stillness of something that should have left chaos behind, but didn't. "They didn't run off," she said, almost to herself. Sergeant Hines sighed. "That's what bothers me most. Even a kid wandering would have left something." A rookie deputy jogged over, out of breath. "North side sweeps clear, same with East Ridge. We're working the ravine edge now." Maya looked up. "Any signs of a slide? Footprints on slope?" "Negative. Not even animal tracks. It's like this side of the forest hasn't been touched in weeks." She turned to Aaron Reyes, who stood several yards away under the arm of a ranger. His eyes were fixed on a single point in the trees, unmoving. "He's been like that for the last 20 minutes, the ranger murmured, barely blinking. Keeps whistling, but the sound was caught in his chest. When he finally spoke, his voice was paper-thin. "Jonah. He had a cough this morning, nothing bad, just tired." "Does he carry an inhaler?" Aaron nodded. "It's in the truck. I forgot to give it to him before dinner. I was only gone 10 seconds. His voice cracked. "They were sitting on that log," he pointed, "telling knock-knock jokes. Micah was pretending to be brave. Jonah was giggling." Then his eyes shifted, like he was trying to make sense of something that logic had long since abandoned. "When I came back, the cocoa was still warm, but they were gone." Maya placed a hand on his shoulder. "We're going to find them." He looked at her, and she saw in that moment not panic, not rage, but a deeper ache, the kind that came from losing more than once. "You don't get it," he whispered. "They don't run away. Not since their mom died. They don't leave." Behind them, Ash let out a soft whine. He had moved again, this time near a thicket just beyond the trailhead. Maya turned, watching him. The fur along his spine had lifted slightly. His stance wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't relaxed either. It was alert, concerned. She walked toward him slowly. The light cut through the trees in long shafts now, like fingers stretching through fog. It caught something half buried in the leaves, a patch of fabric, small, frayed at the edge. Maya knelt and tugged it gently free. A green fleece jacket, child-sized, mud-crusted along the bottom hem, a faint rip at the left sleeve. She turned it over and saw a stitched label near the collar, Jonah R. She held it up for Aaron to see. He took one step forward and stopped. His breath caught in his throat, a sound between sobbing and silence. "That's his," he rasped. "God, that's Jonah's jacket. He never took it off." "Where was this?" Sergeant Hines asked, stepping closer. "Under the leaves," Maya said. "Tucked, not dropped." Hines narrowed his eyes. "That's intentional." She nodded. Ash had lowered his head again, circling the area with slow, measured steps. His tail didn't wag. His shoulders stayed stiff. "Do you think he picked up a scent?" the rookie deputy asked quietly. Maya didn't answer right away. She watched Ash, how he moved. He wasn't tracking a path. He was circling something missing, like a dog pacing a place where sound used to be. She looked around. Trees, leaves, a small bend in the earth, and her heart thudded once, hard. The ground here was soft, too soft. She crouched again and pressed her fingers to the soil. It gave slightly, like it had been stepped on and covered, but no way. Someone else had taken the time to erase it. The forest opened to them with a hush, as if even the birds knew something was wrong. Deputy Maya Whitlock stepped out of her Tahoe and closed the door with the softest click, her breath visible in the evening air. The search crews had gone quieter since she'd arrived. There was a tension now, not from the chaos of panic, but the weight of expectation, like everyone was holding their breath and turning toward her, or, more precisely, to the dog at her side. Ash, once the pride of the K-9 unit, sat stiffly in the back seat, tail curled tight to his hind leg. He was older now, slower. The old injury from the warehouse bust 3 years ago had turned into a permanent limp. But his eyes, they hadn't aged a day. Maya opened the door. "All right, partner," she said gently. "You ready?" Ash hopped down with a grunt, shook his fur free of road dust, and immediately raised his nose to the air. One slow breath in, then another. His entire body stilled, muscles taut beneath the grizzled tan and black coat. He made no sound, but his ears shifted forward. "Yeah," Maya whispered. I feel it too. The wind carried the cold scent of pine, damp dirt, and something harder to define, something metallic, like old metal or blood not yet dried. Maya adjusted the strap on her vest, one hand resting just behind Ash's head. She hadn't worn the badge when she worked K9. She'd worn trust instead, trust in the creature beside her, trust in the wordless language they used to chase ghosts through alleys and forests and dark hallways that people didn't return from. And tonight, she could feel that old bond rising again, not with nostalgia, but necessity. Sergeant Hines walked up, a notepad in one hand, fatigue lining every edge of his posture. "Glad you came," he said, offering a faint nod. "I didn't come for you," Maya replied, her tone softer than her words. "I came for the boys." Hines didn't flinch. "Fair enough. We've swept the northeast and slope trails. Still nothing. Just that one fleece jacket, Jonah's." Ash took a step forward on his own, sniffing the air again. He tilted his head slightly and let out a short, sharp whine. Maya's eyes followed his line of attention. "Where did you find the jacket?" "Just beyond that ridge." Hines gestured toward a slight bend in the trees, about 15 yards out, half buried. She nodded. "He smells it. Maybe more." Aaron Reyes was sitting on a flat rock nearby, shoulders hunched, head buried in his hands. His breathing was uneven, like he was holding back tears out of sheer mechanical effort. Maya didn't approach him, not yet. Right now, the only thing that could comfort anyone was answers, and Ash was the one who could. Years. His genius wasn't in speed, it was in precision. In the way he measured the world with his nose and his silence. He moved in a wide arc around the tent and fire pit. Slowly, nose low, every few steps his head would lift, catching something in the air. Maya followed a few paces behind, letting the leash trail loose in her hand. She didn't call out, didn't guide. Ash didn't need her words. What he needed was her presence. That was all. They circled once, twice, and on the third pass, Ash froze. It wasn't dramatic, just sudden. A shift in posture, his right paw hovered, chest angled slightly left, nose pointed toward the thick cluster of cedar at the edge of the ravine. The wind brushed through his fur, and still he didn't move. Maya stopped beside him. "You found something?" Ash took 2 steps forward, then stopped again, a third, then paused. It was like watching someone step into memory, not just tracking a scent, but remembering it. Maya's heart pulled tight. He was recognizing something, not just the boys, but something older, familiar. "Ash," she murmured, "what is it?" He let out a low, steady growl, barely audible. His head turned toward the same line of trees Aaron had pointed to earlier when he spoke about the black boots. "I don't like this," Maya said under her breath. "Not one bit." A deputy's voice crackled over the radio. "Thermal drone just scanned South Trail. No heat signatures, no wildlife, not even squirrels. Place is a dead zone." Maya keyed in. "That's not natural. Push resources to the west. Tell forensics to double-check soil compression around the clearing. I think we're missing something underground." "Copy." She turned back to Ash, who was now pacing in a tight line. Forward, stop, turn, sniff, repeat. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He sat. Not the obedient kind of sit, not command received. No, this was something different. He sat like he did when he'd find a missing child's clothing in a field years ago, like he knew in his bones that something had been taken, something fragile, something that cried out without sound. And that was when Maya felt it, not through her eyes or ears, but her skin. A tightening across her shoulders, a pull in her chest, the absence of noise, of life, a forest holding its breath, not because it was resting, but because it had witnessed. She crouched beside Ash and ran a hand down his back. "You're not here because you have to be," she whispered. "You're here because they need you." Ash didn't move, but his eyes flicked up, locking with hers. There was something in them, Not fear, not confusion, but that same quiet knowing he had always carried on missions, as if some part of him understood things she never could. "Okay," she said again, rising to her feet. "Let's find them. Let's find out what's hiding out there." Behind her, the shadows thickened, but Ash didn't flinch. Because some dogs don't need light to find the lost. They just need to remember. The wind changed before Ash did. Maya felt it, cooler, sharper, and carrying with it the faint scent of something that didn't belong to trees or soil or weather. It was the kind of change you didn't notice until your body noticed first. A shift in posture, a tightening of breath. The way Ash stopped mid-step and tilted his head to the side. They were a good mile beyond the main clearing now, following no mapped trail. The sun had dipped low enough that the canopy turned everything below into a blue-green dusk. Maya's boots sank slightly into wet leaves, the earth spongy from last week's storm. Birds had gone silent, even the insects held back. Ash moved again, slower now, body low, tail taut but not raised. His paws padded over fallen pine needles without a sound. He was tracking, but not in the usual way. His nose didn't skim the ground. Instead, he sniffed the air, paused, turned back to glance at Maya, then continued forward, like something was calling him from inside the timber. "This isn't just scent," Maya murmured, mostly to herself. "This is memory." Ash had once tracked a fugitive across 3 city blocks of pavement, 3 days after a rainstorm. He'd found children in closets, runaways in drainage tunnels, a woman buried beneath a collapsed shed after a mudslide. His instincts weren't just sharp, they were uncanny. But this was different. His steps weren't just driven, they were tense, as if every tree they passed brought back something he didn't like. Something he'd known once and forgotten on purpose. Branches grew denser ahead. What little daylight remained broke apart into fractured beams, carving shadows across moss and bark like scars. Maya's flashlight stayed off. She didn't want to disturb whatever Ash was trying to listen to. 20 more yards in, he stopped. Maya froze too, one hand instinctively brushing the grip of her holstered sidearm, the other lowering gently to touch Ash's back. His fur rippled under her palm, every muscle wired. Then, without warning, he veered hard right, deeper into the brush. No trail, no opening, just raw forest. Maya followed without question, using her forearm to push aside the limbs that clawed at her jacket. It wasn't until they crested a sled down from the roof vents like dried tears. One of the back windows had cracked and splintered, the edges fogged with mildew. A heavy chain hung from what used to be a door handle, wrapped twice and sealed with an old padlock, now snapped open, barely clinging. Maya stepped closer, careful not to disturb the ground too much. The door creaked slightly in the wind, not swinging, just breathing. She glanced back at Ash. He hadn't followed. His paws remained planted, tail low, body stiff. "What is it, boy?" she asked softly. "What are you feeling?" Ash whined once, a long, mournful sound that curled into the trees and vanished. And then, Maya understood. He'd been here before. Not this exact place, but somewhere like it. Some echo of a scent, a memory, not just of children, but of something watching them from the trees. She scanned the surroundings. No tire tracks, no recent footprints, just a camper and silence, the kind that presses against your ribs. Ash finally took a step forward, reluctantly. His nose moved low again, sniffing the earth directly in front of the camper. Then he stopped beside the broken padlock. Maya crouched and examined the latch. Not new. The rust was real, but the break in the metal, that was fresh, too clean. Someone had opened this recently. Someone had been here after the vines had grown, not before. She stood and tried the door. It didn't move, still sealed from the inside. She knocked. Nothing. Then, just as she turned to signal for backup, she heard it. A soft, muffled thump. Then another, like knuckles against wood, weak, measured. She turned back, pressed her ear to the door. Silence. Then, "Hello?" A child's voice, small, dry. Maya's breath caught. "I'm Deputy Whitlock," she said. "I'm here with a search team. Are you Micah? Jonah?" Another thump. "We're here," a voice said, barely audible. "Please, don't go." She moved quickly now, shoulder against the door. Once, twice. On the third hit, the frame cracked and splintered, just enough for her to wedge a boot in. The smell hit her first. Old sweat, mildew, damp carpet. Then the dark. She flicked her flashlight on and swept it across the inside. Two boys, huddled under a heap of blankets, skin pale, eyes wide and unfocused. Micah clutched his brother tightly. Jonah had a trembling inhaler in one hand, but didn't seem to be using it, giving the whole thing a tilted, wounded posture. The smell of wet leaves and iron hung heavy in the air. But something was off. Too off. The vines, choking the structure, were brittle, like they'd been cut and draped, not grown naturally. A trail of them curled around the rear wheel, but didn't follow the pattern of age. And the dirt beneath the camper had been disturbed. Not freshly, but within the last week. Subtle indentations, not footprints, weight shifts, like someone had been circling it, watching, guarding it. Ash stood at the base of the camper's steps, tail low, nose quivering. He didn't bark, didn't move. His front paws were planted as if he knew whatever was inside didn't need to be startled, only found. Maya climbed the 3 bent steps, each creaking under her weight. The door in front of her was streaked with rust. The handle had no lock, only a single chain, now snapped. The metal bent inward like it had been forced. She tried to push it open. It didn't budge. She tried again. Nothing. Not locked. Jammed from the inside, as if someone had wedged something against it. She turned her head slightly, listening. That's when she heard it. Knock. Faint, hollow, a pause, then again knock. She stepped back, adrenaline tightening in her limbs. "I'm Deputy Whitlock," she called softly. "If you're in there, knock again." Silence. She waited. Then, knock, knock. 2 slow, deliberate taps. "Ash," she murmured. "Get back." The German shepherd obeyed instantly, moving down the steps and planting himself beside the left rear wheel, watching the tree line as if half expecting something or someone to come out of it. Maya backed up a step and squared her shoulder, took a deep breath, slammed forward. The impact rattled her bones. The door creaked, but held. She hit it again. The second strike gave a low groan. She saw the gap open just a fraction, enough to see darkness on the other side. One more hit, and the frame cracked, wood splintering near the hinge. The door gave way, swinging open with a shriek of warped metal. And inside, the light from her flashlight. "Wait." Maya stepped inside carefully, her boots squishing into the soaked carpet. She crouched down, flashlight angled low. "I'm Maya. I'm with the sheriff's department. You're safe now." Micah blinked once. His lips were chapped. His voice, when it came, was hoarse. "You're real?" She nodded. "Yes, and I brought someone with me." She turned slightly, calling, "Ash, come." The dog stepped into the doorway, head low, body cautious. But the moment Jonah saw him, his breath caught. "That's him," he whispered. "The dog. I told you he'd come." Micah's face changed, not into a smile, but a loosening of something that had been clenched too long. He leaned forward, extending a trembling hand. Ash walked to them slowly, then gently placed his head on Jonah's knee. Neither boy cried. They just breathed. Long, shaking breaths, the kind only children make when they've been holding everything inside because they don't know what else to do. Maya knelt beside them, scanning their skin for bruises, burns, anything. But aside from the pallor and dirt, they looked untouched. Not unharmed, but unhurt. "Are you okay? Can you walk?" Micah nodded slowly. "I think so." "Were you alone?" Jonah looked at his brother, then back at Maya. "He said to stay here. He said not to scream. He said the dog would find us." Maya's breath slowed. "Who?" Jonah shook his head. "We didn't see his face, just boots, big ones, black. He sounded nice, but he didn't stay." Micah whispered, "He locked us in. He gave us crackers and juice boxes, and the tape recorder." Maya felt a chill trail down her spine. "Where is it?" Micah pointed toward the rear bunk, a heap of blankets and plastic wrappers. Maya stood slowly and approached. Underneath a folded wool coat, she found a small cassette recorder, the kind you'd see on an old schoolteacher's desk. The tape inside was still halfway wound. She didn't play it, not yet. Instead, she picked up the boys' jackets from the side hook. One was the green fleece she'd seen earlier. The other was a blue windbreaker with a missing zipper. "Let's get you out of here," she said. She opened her radio. "2 boys located, alive, conscious, request medical. Coordinates pinging now. We need extraction." Ash stayed beside Jonah, walking in step as Maya guided them out. The cold air hit the boys like water. Jonah shivered. Micah closed his eyes like he hadn't seen sky in days. The trees rustled softly above, but behind them, in the shadowed frame of that rusting camper, something still lingered, not a person, but the feeling of being watched. They sat on the back bumper only time or trust could bring down. But it wasn't the silence that unsettled her. It was how calm they were, too calm. Jonah leaned against his brother's side, his face pale but composed. Micah kept his arm around him protectively, as though still unsure that any of this was real. The quiet between them was heavy with something unsaid. Ash sat nearby, close but not hovering, ears angled back, posture loose. He hadn't barked once since entering the camper. He hadn't needed to. A paramedic was checking Jonah's vitals under the amber light of dusk. His pulse was thin, oxygen slightly low. Maya overheard one of them whisper to the other, "They haven't eaten in at least 48 hours." Maya approached slowly, crouching to meet Jonah's eye level. "Hey, can I ask you something, buddy?" Jonah looked up. His eyes were the kind that had seen too much but didn't know how to say it yet. "You said someone told you the dog would come. Can you tell me more about that?" Jonah hesitated, then he nodded. He wasn't scary. His voice was soft. "You saw him?" Jonah shook his head. "Just boots, black ones. They stopped in the doorway, and he said not to move, that someone would come for us, that the dog would know." Maya's breath caught for just a second. Micah chimed in, his voice low. He left water bottles and a flashlight. Then he locked the door. "Did he say why you had to be quiet?" Jonah glanced down at Ash, who was now resting his head on his front paws, watching them with those old amber eyes. "He said, if we made noise, the wrong people might come first." Maya leaned back slowly. There was something deeply wrong with all of this. The camper was buried, nearly invisible. The boys had been left with just enough to survive, but not thrive. No injuries, no trauma, but also no comfort. It wasn't a kidnapping in the traditional sense. It was a containment. She stood, keyed her radio. "Dispatch, this is Deputy Whitlock. We've confirmed both children, alive. Requesting full forensic response team to this site. Tape off the camper and surrounding perimeter. This isn't just a recovery. It's a crime scene." "Copy that. ETA 25 minutes. Reinforcements en route." As she let go of the mic, her eyes drifted back to the camper, now distant in the fading light, but still visible. Its shape sat like a scar on the landscape, half swallowed by the ground, half spat back out. Time hadn't touched it right. Too much erosion in some places, none in others. She walked back toward it. The air changed as she approached, colder, somehow thicker. The smell of rot clung to the doorway, but beneath it was something else. Faint, medicinal, like antiseptic, edges frayed. She picked it up carefully. Crayon lines, a drawing. 3 stick figures inside a rectangle, 1 taller, 2 smaller. Outside the box, a dog. And near the bottom corner, red scribbled letters. "He said the dog would come." A chill crawled down her back. This wasn't just what the boys had been told. It had been repeated, reinforced, as if someone wanted them to believe in it. As if someone had been planting the idea long before they ever arrived here. She turned around and looked into the woods. The boys hadn't screamed. They hadn't tried to escape, because they trusted that the dog would come. And somehow, they'd been right. Ash had known the way before the map even existed. She turned back to the camper, taking in every detail, the rust patterns, the uneven growth of vines, the half-buried tires. No plate, no visible VIN. Whoever placed this here wanted it to disappear. But they also wanted it to be found. And that's what chilled Maya most. This wasn't negligence. It was design. She walked back toward the boys, her mind reeling through every call she'd ever responded to. Every missing child, every cold case. The logic behind abduction was always messy. Desperation, impulse, profit. But this was ritual. Jonah was now curled against Ash, one small hand resting on the dog's shoulder. Ash didn't move, just watched him. Micah saw Maya approaching and straightened. "Are we going home now?" "Soon," Maya said gently. "Your dad is on his way." Micah nodded but didn't smile. "Is he mad?" "No, just scared. And very, very happy." Jonah spoke up again, this time in a whisper. He said the dog always finds the right ones." Maya blinked. "Who said that?" Jonah didn't answer, but his face looked comforted, like he was still holding on to that voice, that presence, like it had somehow made him feel safe. Ash stirred. His ears perked, not alarmed, but aware. Maya followed his gaze. The woods beyond the perimeter. Nothing moved. No birds, no crack of a twig, no wind, but the trees felt closer. The camper was towed out of Redwood Hollow, under the shroud of early morning fog, its rusted bones groaning as the winch pulled it free from years of half-burial. The tires were rotted down to the belts, and the undercarriage had partially fused with left the site once. Not until the camper was locked down and hauled to the state forensics lab. Now, hours later, she stood in front of her office computer with a VIN number scrawled across a sticky note and a knot forming in her gut. It typed it in. The state DMV system loaded. A moment of lag, then a result. Status: destroyed. Total loss. Location: Gallatin County, Montana. Date of incident: March 14, 2020. Cause: fire. Structural destruction. Insurance claim filed, yes. Owner: Crow, Elias. Maya stared at the screen. It couldn't be. She ran it again. Same result. Destroyed. She leaned in closer, double-checking the serial code. The numbers matched. The dents on the bumper matched the DMV photos from the pre-fire registry. Even the make and model, a 1978 Coachland Series 3, lined up. Except it wasn't destroyed. It had been in front of her less than 12 hours ago. She'd pried its warped door open with her own shoulder. She'd seen the moss, the blankets, the tape recorder. She'd pulled 2 living, breathing children from inside. And the state said it didn't exist anymore. "Someone's lying," she murmured. Ash lifted his head from under the desk. A soft, low sound escaped him. Not quite a whine, more like agreement. Maya opened the insurance claim file attached to the record. The scanned documents were grainy, but legible. An incident report from the Gallatin County Fire Department described the blaze. Total consumption, nothing salvageable. Photos attached showed a collapsed aluminum frame, scorched ground, blackened soil. She clicked through them, one by one. Burned siding, melted seams, ashes. And then, in one image, taken from the side, a partially intact VIN plate. The same plate, the same camper. Except not, because hers wasn't burned. She had seen flakes of paint clinging to the exterior, smelled old mold, not soot. She had touched curtains that were dirty but unscorched. Maya leaned back in her chair, heart thudding now. She picked up her phone and called the forensics lab. A tech named Jess answered on the second ring. "Hey, Whitlock. I need confirmation. The camper from Hollow Ridge. Is it on site?" "Yeah, we just got it unloaded an hour ago. Have you logged the VIN?" "Just about to. You want me to call you when it's official?" "No," Maya said. "I already ran it." Jess paused. "Okay. It's supposed to be a total loss. Declared destroyed in a fire in Montana." Stared at the horizon. The sun had gone behind the pines. The sky was bruising purple. Ash came to stand beside her, resting his chin on the windowsill. She scratched behind his ear. That camper. Someone wanted it to disappear. Ash didn't react, just stared forward, ears forward, body still. Then he let out a low rumble, deep, persistent. Maya turned. He was no longer watching the horizon. He was staring at the metal door of the camper in her mind, the one she'd forced open with her shoulder, the one that had kept two boys hidden for days, in silence, the one the world insisted no longer existed. A door burned in photos, but cool to the touch. She saw it again in her mind, the latch, bent but uncharred, the broken chain, the voice of a boy whispering, "He said not to scream. He said the dog would come." A camper declared gone, but still here, still breathing, still waiting. It was almost midnight when the trail cam footage came in. The forensics team had set the cameras as standard procedure, high on trees, motion-triggered, thermal sensitive, some infrared. Most of the time, they caught nothing more than raccoons, stray deer, or the occasional fox ghosting past. But this time was different. This time, someone had been watching. Maya stood alone in the evidence review room, the glow of the monitor painting cold light across her face. The room was silent, except for the low hum of the cooling fan and the occasional creak of the building settling. Outside the windows, the woods were just a dark wall, impenetrable. She hit play on the video file. The footage was time-stamped 5:41 p.m., exactly 32 minutes after Micah and Jonah had been pulled from the camper. The camera faced north, angled slightly downward along a narrow animal trail. The leaves barely stirred. There was nothing, just wind through the brush and the soft shifting of dying light. Then, movement. From the left side of the frame, a figure stepped into view. Not rushing, not sneaking, just standing. Maya leaned in. Her breath slowed. The person wore a dark hooded jacket, the drawstrings pulled tight so that the face remained in shadow. Hands were buried in the pockets. The pants were nondescript, cargo style, forest-toned. But the boots... She froze the frame, zoomed in, adjusted contrast. Thick-soled, military style, tan leather, high-laced, exactly as Micah and Jonah had described. Her throat tightened. She rewound the footage, watched it again, slower. The figure stepped to the center of the frame and stood with one foot resting on stillness, the kind of calm that doesn't come from confidence but from certainty. Maya's stomach turned. He wasn't afraid of being caught. He had come to see who came. She stepped back from the monitor and took a breath. The air in the room felt thinner now, tighter, as if the walls themselves had taken in what she'd just seen. Ash, lying near the door, stirred. His ears twitched. He stood slowly and walked to her side without a sound. She looked down at him. You knew, didn't you? Ash didn't look at her. He stared at the monitor, the frozen frame, the blurred figure in the woods, the man with no face. Maya scrubbed forward in the video, trying to catch any other angles, but the figure only remained in frame for 43 seconds. Then he turned, not fast, and walked out of view, vanishing behind a thicket of brush. No other camera caught him. No exit path was logged. She keyed the intercom. "Sergeant Hines, I need you in review room 3, now." Minutes later, he entered, face pinched with fatigue but alert. She rewound the footage and let it play without speaking. When it finished, he exhaled slowly. Jesus. 30 minutes after rescue, she said. He didn't interrupt, didn't interfere. He just came to see it happen. Think it was the same guy? Micah and Jonah described the boots perfectly. They never saw his face, just his voice, his calm, his instructions. Think he knew we had trail cams? I think he wanted to be seen. Hines frowned. Why would he want that? Maya's voice was quiet. Because it's not about hiding. It's about proving he's still ahead of us. She closed the video file, exported the still frame, and printed it. The photo came out grainy, but the silhouette was clear. The boots were the sharpest detail. She pinned it to the corkboard next to the VIN report and insurance records. Destroyed camper, alive boys, no injuries, man in the trees, no face, just watching. Each thread led to something deeper than coincidence. It was orchestration. Maya paced the room, thinking aloud. He waited until after the boys were rescued. He wanted to confirm Ash had come. Like it mattered, like it was part of the test. Test? She looked at Hines. He told the boys not to scream, that the dog would come. Not a dog, the dog. Ash. He knew we'd bring him. He wanted to see who would come, and maybe... She trailed off. Hines leaned forward. Maybe what? Maya spoke slowly. Maybe this wasn't about the boys at all. Maybe this was about us. Ash let out a low breath and sat down, eyes never leaving the printed photo. The man in the footage had known exactly where to stand, how long to stay, when to leave. Not a second too soon. Strangers. The camper was gone now, towed away for forensic analysis. But the air still remembered it. The clearing felt stripped bare, like someone had ripped a scab off the earth and left the wound exposed to the cold. Ash sat in the passenger seat, head low, eyes narrowed. He hadn't rested well the night before, neither had she. They both knew this wasn't over. Finding the boys hadn't ended anything. It had only unlocked a door into something deeper and darker. Maya stepped out, boots meeting damp soil. The silence here was heavier than before, more deliberate, as if the forest had seen them coming and chose not to speak. Ash jumped down behind her, his limp more noticeable this morning. But the moment his paws touched the ground, his head rose. Ears forward, nose twitching. Something had changed. They crossed the clearing slowly, past the shallow imprint where the camper had sunk into the earth. The soil was dark and unsettled, marked by tire grooves and boot tracks from the recovery crew. But Ash didn't go there. He veered right, toward a narrow stand of pines just beyond the tree line, a place Maya hadn't looked closely before. His gait quickened, his breathing sharpened. That old sense of purpose, of recognition, flared in him again. Maya followed, weaving through the underbrush. The trees here grew tighter, the light thinner. Ash paused near a fallen log and sniffed the base of a half-buried boulder. Then he gave a single, sharp bark. Maya's heart kicked. She stepped beside him and saw it. A rusted padlock, half sunk into the dirt. Not attached to anything, just left. The shackle had been bent with force, the body cracked. She knelt, brushed away the dirt around it. It wasn't from the camper door. It was older. Beside it, covered in pine needles, was a plastic storage crate, the kind you'd find in a garage or school closet. It was scratched and stained, the lid held down by a single bungee cord. Maya slipped on gloves before pulling it free. The lid groaned as it opened. Inside, a child's shoe, white, canvas, with a pink flower printed near the toe. The sole was worn nearly flat. A blanket, small and frayed at the corners, folded but stiff with age, and on the very bottom, a spiral-bound notebook, its pages warped from moisture, edges curled. She picked it up carefully. The cover was a pale blue, torn halfway through. Stickers, once colorful, had faded into ghost shapes. Maya flipped through the first few pages. Crayon drawings. Not by Micah, not by Jonah. These belonged to someone else. The lines were shakier, the colors harder. A house, a dog, a man standing in the doorway. Over and over, different variations of the same scene. A dark figure with no face. A child. Wait. Her chest tightened. These weren't random doodles. These were memories, preserved in the only language the child had been able to use. She turned to the inside cover. One name. Lacey. The last name was smeared beyond recognition. Maya stared at it for a long time, the way one might stare at a name on a headstone. Not because it confirmed something, but because it suggested everything else left unsaid. Ash sat beside her, eyes watching the notebook like it could bite. Maya slowly closed the cover, set the notebook into an evidence bag, and sealed it. Then she turned to scan the surrounding trees, the way they leaned in, the way no birds called from their branches. "Why leave this here?" she whispered aloud. "Why not bury it deeper?" The answer, she realized, was the same one she kept coming back to. Because he wanted it found, not by just anyone, by her. She rose, looking down at Ash. He's not just watching. He's leaving breadcrumbs. Ash's tail gave one soft thump against the earth. Not joy, just acknowledgement. They walked slowly back toward the clearing. Maya glanced at the crater the camper had left, the soil moist and cold. She tried to picture it again. How it sat half-hidden, how the boys had waited, unmoving, breathing in mold and silence. She imagined the man, the figure in the hood, standing nearby, just out of sight, listening, deciding, and then leaving. But not without a trace, never without a trace. Back at the vehicle, she set the crate carefully in the back. One hand still held the padlock, cool and rough in her palm. It wasn't from this scene. That meant it had been brought here, placed. Which also meant someone had returned after the rescue. She looked over her shoulder, into the trees again. No movement, but the feeling lingered, that low-level hum of being observed. Not hunted, not threatened, chosen. Maya opened the door. Ash hopped in without hesitation. As she started the engine, the forest closed back behind her. No trail, no sound. Only a notebook, a child's shoe, and a name. A name that didn't belong to either boy. The The evidence locker was quiet, save for the soft whir of the overhead light and the sound of Maya's gloved fingers peeling open the plastic evidence bag. Inside, fluorescent light in a cold room full of locked cabinets and forgotten names. She picked up the manila folder again. Missing person. Jennifer Rose Cartwright, age 6. Vanished from a rest stop just off Highway 84, south of the Columbia River. Last seen with her mother, Amy Cartwright, during a late summer road trip. The girl had asked to use the restroom. Her mother had waited just outside the building. Jenny never came back out. No screams, no signs of struggle, no surveillance footage worth anything, just gone. The initial investigation had been swift. Local departments, highway patrol, even park rangers. The Amber Alert went out within 2 hours. Search dogs swept the area, but the trail died at the edge of the lot. There were rumors, of course. A white van, a man with a limp, someone dressed like a ranger. But nothing stuck. No suspects, no leads, just one small detail recorded in the officer's log. Maya flipped the page. Mother's stated child wore canvas sneakers, white with pink flower near toe, Velcro strap. Maya looked down at the shoe again. Same size, same design, same print, and the same flower. Ash shifted beside her, lifting his head from where he'd curled at the door. He didn't move closer, didn't need to. His body always reacted to the shift in her breath, in her stillness. "I think we found her shoe," Maya whispered. The name, Jenny, was written faintly in the inside arch. Likely by her mother, the J had started to fade, but the rest was there, still waiting. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she had tracked down only 2 hours before. The voice that answered was softer than she expected. "Hello? Is this Amy Cartwright?" A pause. "Yes. Who's calling?" "My name is Deputy Maya Whitlock, Fairhaven Sheriff's Department. I'm working a case that might connect to your daughter." Another pause. A long one. You said Jenny?" "Yes, ma'am." There was a breath on the line that was more than just a sigh. It was a heart unfolding in disbelief. "We never found anything," Amy said finally. "Not even her backpack. I never stopped looking, but—" Her voice cracked. "We found a shoe," Maya said gently. "Same size, same description, in a forest near Redwood Hollow, along with a notebook. The name Lacey was inside, but the shoe matches Jenny's file exactly. Same flower, same wear pattern." Silence, then, "Can I see it?" Maya emailed the photo as they spoke. The seconds that followed stretched impossibly long. "Oh my God," Amy whispered. "That's hers. That's Jenny's." Maya closed her eyes. "I'm sorry to bring this up again, but there's more." Strange. About the week before she disappeared, Jenny kept talking about a dream, about a dog. She said, "He told me the dog would come if I ever got lost." I thought she was just playing or trying to comfort herself. Maya felt her chest tighten. "She said it like she believed it," Amy continued. "Like someone had told her that before. I didn't think it meant anything." Maya looked at Ash. The dog had risen now, watching her with a kind of stillness that said, "It means everything." After hanging up, Maya retrieved the plastic crate from evidence and removed the spiral notebook again. She flipped past the first pages, landing on a drawing of a forest, a simple one, in thick crayon strokes. A sun with a face. 3 small figures beneath a tree, one large black dog beside them. And under the scene, in a child's uneven handwriting, "The dog comes. He always does." Maya stared at it. What disturbed her wasn't the content, but the pattern. It wasn't just Micah and Jonah. It wasn't just Jenny. It was all of them. Someone had planted the same story in each of their minds. A voice, male, calm, reassuring, repeating the same promise. Stay quiet. The dog will come. A way to make them compliant, a way to keep them still, a way to make them wait. But why? For how long? And how many more? Maya sat back in the chair, the sneakers still resting on the table in front of her. Ash rested his head beside it, nose inches from the fabric, and didn't move. She didn't need him to bark. The silence said it all. The gravel crunched beneath the cruiser's tires as Maya pulled up to the edge of a dilapidated homestead just outside the old Fairhaven boundary line. The mailbox, rusted and leaning, still bore a name in chipped paint: Crow. Wind dragged through the trees behind the house like something whispering on purpose. Ash stirred in the passenger seat, his ears perked. Low growl, not threatening, but aware. "This is it," Maya said quietly. Elias Crow, Camper's last registered owner, presumed dead in a house fire 4 years ago. But the house in front of her wasn't burned, not even close. Paint peeled in long strips, the porch sagged, and the roof bowed in places. But the structure stood, whole, intact, still breathing, just like the camper that shouldn't have existed either. She approached slowly, hand resting on the grip of her sidearm. Ash padded beside her with a soft limp, alert but composed. The doorknob resisted at first, then gave with a rusty pop. The door swung open. What greeted them was not darkness, but color. Hundreds, no, trees, clouds, rainbows. In the kitchen, a stack of drawings was pinned with a chipped coffee mug, as though someone had meant to sort them. What in the world? She scanned the walls. Some pictures were dated 2018, 2019. Some had names scrawled in the corners: Lacey, Jonah, Jenny. Others were anonymous. A few had fingerprints, tiny smudges of color where a child had pressed a thumb into the crayon wax. Ash moved ahead, sniffing the air, nose low and steady. Maya paused near the hallway. There, above a small light switch, was a drawing more detailed than the rest. A black dog with sharp ears and brown eyes. Below it, in careful letters, Ash. Her breath caught. She hadn't trained with Ash in this county. None of these children should have known his name, and yet, here it was. The hallway narrowed, thick with paper and dust. At the end stood a closed door, maybe a bedroom once. Maya didn't open it yet. Her gaze dropped to the floor. Ash had stopped. He stood at the edge of a faded rug, one paw pressed against it gently, as if feeling for breath beneath the fibers. "You found something, didn't you?" she whispered. Ash gave a low whine and scratched once, just once. Maya knelt and pulled the rug back. Underneath, set into the wood, was a trapdoor, the kind with rusted iron rings and a seam barely visible unless you were looking, or unless you could smell it. She touched the ring and pulled. It groaned. Wood splintered. A wave of stale air hit her, damp, moldy, metallic. Ash didn't move. He simply stared down into the darkness, his ears back, tail still. Maya drew her flashlight and shone it downward, a narrow wooden staircase, steep, old. It disappeared into black. She swallowed, radioed her location. No response. Reception was dead out here, as expected. "You stay," she said, though her hand remained near Ash's neck for just a second longer than necessary, grounding herself. Then she descended. The steps groaned under her weight. The air thickened the deeper she went. A basement? No, a crawl space, wider than expected. Cold stone walls pressed close, and the scent of mildew clung to everything. Then, the beam of her light hit something. A chair. A small one. Wood. Child-sized. Next to it, a stuffed rabbit, long stained with age, one eye missing. Beside that, a child's backpack, still zipped. Maya knelt, hands trembling slightly, and opened it. Inside, flashlight bounced wildly. She emerged just as Ash stood stiff, facing the hallway now, growling low. "Footsteps," Maya whispered. She heard them too. Then silence. Then nothing. She backed toward the door slowly, gun drawn, breath caught in her chest. But there was no one. Just the house full of drawings, swaying gently in the still air. Ash came beside her, protective. Maya stared again at the drawing labeled Ash, and she realized something. Many of the drawings, dozens of them, featured the same dog. Sometimes bigger, sometimes beside different children. Always watching, always present. And in nearly every one, he was standing in front of something, blocking it, guarding it. Sometimes it was a door, sometimes it was a dark forest. Sometimes it was a man, a faceless one. The trapdoor slammed shut above her, sealing out the thin daylight. All that remained was the hush of sleeping stone, and the buzz of a single bare bulb that dangled halfway down a low-ceilinged corridor. Maya's flashlight carved a pale tunnel through the dust. In its beam, motes drifted like tiny ghosts. Ash stayed at the threshold, ears pinned, body rigid, unwilling to follow her farther. It wasn't fear. It was knowing. Sometimes knowing was worse. The crawl space opened into a cramped chamber, lined on 3 sides by metal shelving. Each shelf sagged under the weight of VHS cassettes, black plastic spines marching in perfect rows, labels handwritten in neat block letters. There must have been hundreds, maybe more. Maya felt the air press closer, as if every cassette were another set of eyes. Name after name, child after child, each followed by a date. The day they were taken, the day they were found. She wasn't sure which thought chilled her more. Her gloved fingers skimmed along the spines until one label halted her breath. Rias, M. Micah. The day before yesterday. The squeak of plastic against metal sounded like a scream in the narrow room as she slid the tape free. For a heartbeat, she simply held it, feeling the weight of it, the weight of proof. And of something else, cruelty disguised as care. At the end of the shelves sat an old CRT television and a VCR balanced on a mildewed footlocker. A worn extension cord snaked up the wall and disappeared into darkness. Whoever set this up had planned for someone to watch. Maya fed the cassette into the slot. The machine swallowed it with a mechanical gulp, and static washed over the screen in a gray storm. She pressed play. First came darkness. Then the grainy outline of the camper's interior flickered into view, lit only by a flashlight laid on it well. Remember, no talking, no noise. The dog always comes when the forest is quiet.
Jonah nodded solemnly. Micah placed an arm around his brother.
And when the dog comes,
The voice continued.
you tell him I kept my promise. Yes?
Both boys murmured a soft yes. Maya's pulse hammered in her ears. The tape ran on. Minutes of silence. The flashlight rolled slightly, sending shadows tilting across the boys' faces, but they never flinched. They'd already learned that movement changed nothing.
At the 6-minute mark, the voice returned, softer now, almost tender. Good. Sleep if you can. Dream of places where the cold can't reach you. When you wake, he'll be near.
The screen went dark. End of recording. Maya ejected the tape with a shaky hand. Her chest ached, as if she had held her breath the entire time. She stared at the black rectangle in her palm. 20 grams of plastic. 2 boys' stolen hours wound tight around a spool. Ash whined above. She climbed back through the corridor, clutching the tape. When she emerged, he pressed against her leg, grounding her to the present. She knelt, burying a hand in his fur.
You were the story he fed them.
She whispered.
Their compass. Their lullaby.
Ash's tail made one muted sweep across the dusty floorboards, as if to say he would have come sooner if only he'd known. Maya set the tape in an evidence pouch, sealing it with shaking fingers. Then she rose and swept her flashlight across the room one last time. So many tapes, each one a history trapped in oxide and fear, each one a child waiting in grainy quiet for a dog that might never arrive. But one had, and that meant the rest might still be found. She took a single drawing from the wall, the black dog guarding the door, and folded it carefully into her pocket, proof that hope, even twisted hope, had a face here. On her way out, she flicked the bulb's pull chain, leaving the chamber in complete darkness. The silence swelled behind her like a held breath as she replaced the rug and latched the trap door. Outside, dawn finally crept through the clouds, pale and uncertain. The world felt different under that tentative light, heavier, but clearer too. She looked at Ash. He lifted his gaze toward the thinning night and exhaled.
Come on, partner.
She said.
We have work to do, and children to remember.
They stepped off the porch together, leaving the paper-lined house to settle back into its hush. Behind them, unseen in the empty hall, one loose drawing fluttered against the wall, tiny crayon hands waving farewell to the dog that always came. The audio lab at the State Bureau looked nothing like the sterile humming spaces Maya was used to. Instead, it resembled an aging college studio, foam panels yellowed by time,
to drag a phantom out of hiding. Specialist Tara Hale, compact frame, half-moon glasses, hair a shock of silver, even though she was barely 40, sat behind a mixing board lit up with LEDs. On one screen ran a waveform from the VHS extract, the disembodied voice that had coached Micah and Jonah to be still. On the second screen floated another waveform, 10 years older but hauntingly similar. Tara tapped a key, overlaying the 2 files. Peaks, valleys, breath prints aligned like identical fingerprints. No doubt? Maya asked, arms folded tight across her chest. Statistically 0, Tara said. Formant patterns, speech tempo, glottal pressure, they match so clean it almost feels deliberate. She clicked a third window, a grainy archive photograph of a local radio booth, call letters KFRV stenciled on acoustic foam. Seated before the mic, a man in his early 30s, dark hair, deliberately plain. His eyes were calm, almost kind. The caption read, Community Volunteer Hour, March 12, 2015. Guest, Elias Crow, founder, Bright Steps Youth Litter Project. This is the source? Maya asked. Tara nodded. Public access, 15-minute segment. He phoned in every month for about a year, pitching park cleanups and canned food drives. Voice signatures a match down to the tremolo in his S's. Maya studied the photo. The man's smile was polite, muted, like someone trained in the posture of harmlessness. But his eyes, They seemed to be listening rather than speaking, as though even then he was gathering details for later use. "Elias Crow," Maya murmured. Tara cleared her throat. "Alias, actually. Birth name Luther Dale Knox. Started using Crow around 2013 after a short stint in Idaho. No felony sheet, a couple misdemeanors for trespass and unlawful camping. The kicker?" She clicked open another file. 3 foster parent applications in 3 different counties, all denied for excessive emotional attachment during visitation and unstructured, unsupervised activities with minors. Maya felt a slow chill slide under her Kevlar. Knox had wanted in the system, wanted proximity. When the legitimate door closed, he'd built his own backdoor world of campers, trapdoors, and measured whispers. Tara hit the spacebar, the speakers crackled, the 2015 interview rolled.
Host, cheerful. "We've got Elias Crow on line 2. Founder of Bright Steps, right?" Crow, Knox. Warm, steady. "That's right, Deb. Kids thrive when they feel listened to. When someone shows up exactly when they say they will." Maya's shoulders tensed. The phrase struck like a match on dry tinder.
Her voice was gentler now. "We traced his last legal address, a P.O. box in Granite Falls, closed out in 2021. After that, nothing. No tax filings, no utilities, ghost-level quiet. Until he started leaving children in the woods," Maya said, her tone clipped. Ash, lying just behind her chair, lifted his head and watched the speakers, as if he too could sense the man behind the sound. Maya rubbed the bridge of her nose. "He's orchestrating rescues, choreographing the moment the dog arrives, so the promise comes true. Like a story he's retelling," Tara offered, "over and over until it's perfect." Maya thought of the countless drawings plastered on Crow's walls, the repeating image of a dog guarding trembling children, the faceless figure looming in the margins. Every crayon line was rehearsal, every VHS tape a dress rehearsal for Faith. "Run his foster care rejections against our missing child rolls," she said. "Every county he applied in, there's a pattern we're not seeing yet." Tara nodded, already cued. Maya turned to leave, but Tara called after her. "There's one more thing." She clicked a final audio file, shorter than the others, less than 5 seconds. A hush, then Knox's voice, slower, intimate. "Tell the dog I remember." Static swallowed the rest. "He left that on the tail end of Micah's tape," Tara explained. "A personal tag, almost like he knew we'd pull it." Maya stared at the waveform, those peaks and valleys that looked too calm, too measured for the havoc they hid. "I'll tell him," she whispered. In the hallway outside, fluorescent lights flickered. Maya knelt beside Ash, pressing her forehead gently to his. "He remembers you," she said, voice thick, "but he doesn't know how well you remember him." Ash's tail swept the floor once, silent punctuation to a promise neither of them had ever broken. Maya straightened, eyes hardening. "Time to make the ghost a man again," she said, and together they headed for the elevators, toward whatever door Knox had already convinced himself they would open next. The Fairhaven station slept under a thin drizzle, sodium lamps casting tired halos across the empty lot. Inside, the night shift dispatcher dozed over a crossword, while 2 deputies traded paperwork yawns. It should have been the quietest hour, 3:12 a.m., the kind that blurs one day into the next without leaving a mark. But Ash refused to close his eyes. Maya noticed first in the reflection of her office window, the shepherd's silhouette pacing behind her desk, head angled toward the back wall, ears locked forward. Every few steps he halted, issued a guttural rumble, then resumed the silent patrol. It wasn't the restless shuffle he made when he needed water or air. This was different, an instinct humming in the marrow. She set aside through the metal door's weather strip. Rain tapped the glass pane in tiny metallic ticks. Ash pressed his nose to the bottom edge, hackles lifting. "What is it, partner?" Maya whispered, flicking off the hallway light so their own reflections wouldn't blind them. Beyond the glass lay only the staff lot, her cruiser, a maintenance truck, and a ragged tree line sagging under the rain. Then she saw it. A postcard, rain-spotted, pinned to the trunk of a cedar 10 yards from the door. It fluttered once, teasing the wind, then stilled, like a deliberate hand held it in place. Maya eased the door open. Ash slipped out ahead of her, staying low. The drizzle chilled her cheeks, carried the ghost of pine and diesel. No footsteps, no engine idling, just the hush of a town too small to suspect the nightmare growing at its edge. The pin was an ordinary pushtack, bright red, as if Knox wanted color to guide her eyes. She plucked the card free and turned it over under the beam of her flashlight. Front, a faded photograph of Valley Pines Family Fun Center, the shuttered amusement park from her childhood. Sun-bleached roller coaster, cotton candy stall, the smiling cartoon mascot she barely remembered until now. Back, 4 words penned in careful block capitals. "You're getting closer. Bring the dog." Below it, an elegant flourish, LDK, Luther, Dale, Knox. Her fingers tightened, rainwater trickling between knuckles. The ink hadn't bled yet. He must have pinned it minutes ago, maybe seconds. A branch cracked deeper in the trees. Ash pivoted, muscles coiled. Maya swung the flashlight, nothing but curtains of rain and silhouettes of trunks. But she felt it, that subtle displacement of air when eyes withdraw into shadows. He had been standing here, close enough to see the glow of her office lamp, close enough to watch Ash pace behind the glass, close enough to hear his own name whispered in a voice analysis lab hours earlier. A bolt of anger lanced through the dread. "You think you're writing this story," she thought. "You think you're the author, and we're the audience." She slipped the postcard into an evidence pouch, sealing it with a snap. Not this time. Dawn crawled across the parking lot but failed to wash the tension from Ash's shoulders. He'd kept vigil the rest of the night, planted by the back window, a low growl pulsing every time headlights ghosted by on the distant highway. Maya sat beside him on the tile floor, nursing coffee gone bitter from neglect. She watched the rain lighten to drizzle, then to a mist that clung to the cedar needles like silver dust. "He wants you," she murmured. "He wants the dog who keeps the promises." Ash's ears flicked back, a brief acknowledgement. Maya's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Tara Hale. Match confirmed. Knox's foster applications overlap with received notes referencing a good dog. Maya inhaled through her teeth. Each overlap tightened the noose around Knox's myth. But a myth starved of attention grows wilder, not weaker, and he had just proven how close he was willing to stand to the people hunting him. She rose, slid the postcard into a clear evidence frame, and pinned it to the task board beside Jenny's sneaker and Micah's VHS label. The picture of Valley Pines grinned through the plastic, sunshine on rust and weeds. "We'll go," she told the postcard, "but on our terms." From his post at the window, Ash finally lay down, but sleep wouldn't claim him. His gaze stayed fixed on the cedar tree where the message had hung, waiting, as if any second the silhouette in the hooded jacket might step back into view. And in that electric hush between heartbeat and breath, Maya understood the most frightening part. Knox wasn't running. Knox was waiting. Waiting for the curtain to rise on the stage he'd set. Waiting for the dog to arrive so the story could play out the way it always did. Only this time, perhaps, with an ending he'd scripted long ago. But stories, Maya knew, belong to those who survived them. She clipped Ash's lead to his collar and whispered, Let's rewrite the third act. The shepherd stood, shook the fatigue from his coat and followed her down the hall, past hushed desks, past deputies just beginning to stir, toward the front doors, the widening dawn, and the road that led to Valley Pines. Because somewhere out there, under peeling paint and carnival ghosts, Luther Dale Knox was already rehearsing his next line. And this time, they intended to cut him off before he could speak it. The two-lane highway unfurled beneath the cruiser's headlights, rainwater still ribboning off the tires, but Maya's gaze stayed on the evidence board she'd built in her mind. Names hovered there: Jenny, Micah, Jonah, Lacey Jordan, Martin Serrano, Chloe Hatch, each pinned not by location or date, but by the people who had gone after them. Grandmothers who canvassed neighborhoods with Xeroxed flyers. Fathers who slept in tents beside search headquarters. Whole communities that refused to quit. Every file Tara forwarded showed the same grim annotation. Family remained active beyond standard search window. Knox hadn't selected victims for isolation, he'd selected them for the certainty someone would come. The cruiser crested a hill. Ahead, the dawn spread thin pink over mist-choked valleys. Ash sat shotgun, chin on the dash, eyes fixed forward as if he too were reading the road like a case file. Maya tightened her grip on the wheel. "Not about the kids," she murmured. "About the chase." She replayed the timeline of Micah, stage set. A camper carrying the ghost of a fire that never touched it. Then he steps back into the trees, synchronizing his breath with the moment Ash will break through the door. A private performance. Who is the audience? The radio crackled with Tara's voice, thin over patchy reception. Cross-referencing finished. All 6 missing child cases share common threads. Media coverage above state average. Multi-agency canine deployment. Sustained community engagement past 30 days. Knox picks headlines, not hiding spots. Maya parked on the gravel shoulder, engine idling. "He's training us," she said into the handset, "teaching the rescuers to come on command, like handlers breaking in new dogs."
Ash whined, a soft keening that made her chest cinch. She reached across, scratched behind his ear.
"We're the subjects, not the kids." A pause from Tara. "You think he escalates after the dog arrives?" Maya pictured the rows of tapes. "I think the rescue is the climax. Once the promise is fulfilled, he discards the set, burns the camper, abandons the house, moves on to the next rehearsal." Tara's breath hissed through the channel.
"How do we find him before the script starts?"
"We flip it," Maya answered. "We stop being predictable." She killed the engine and stepped into the cold dawn haze. Overhead, crows stirred in skeletal pines. The world smelled of wet bark and the faint sweetness of rotting cedar needles. Ash bounded out, limp, minimal, nose high. Maya opened the rear hatch and unrolled a laminated topo map across the bumper. Red pushpins marked Knox's known sites: Montana Fire, Cedar Hollow Shed, Valley Pines Park, Crow House. She traced them with a gloved finger, connecting dots like stitches across wounded land. Every site sat near a search and rescue training corridor, places where canine units drilled, where volunteer networks were historically strong. Knox wasn't hiding from rescuers, he was orbiting them. "He needs the dog," Maya whispered. "He's spent years grooming that myth." Ash bumped her hip, a gentle nudge that said, "We're here. Decide." She folded the map, slid it into her pack, and knelt to speak eye to eye with him. "No more chasing breadcrumbs. Today, we set the trail." Ash's tail flicked once. Agreement. Detectives, state agents, and a weary-eyed FBI liaison crowded around Maya's hastily erected board. She clicked a remote. Knox's foster application photo filled the projector screen. Knox isn't kidnapping for ransom, trafficking, or sadism, she began. He's orchestrating a repeatable scenario. Child vanishes, community mobilizes, canine hero completes the rescue. A one-man studio. Exactly, Maya said. And like any director, he needs a set, a cast, and most importantly, an audience. That audience is us. She circled a list of future civic events: County Fair, SAR Canine Demo Day, a charity fun run through Redwood Trails. These are his casting calls. Sergeant Hines raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting we bait him? Advertise a high-profile search scenario? We don't have to advertise, Maya replied. We just have to deviate from the script he expects. Keep the next disappearance from happening by making the outcome uncertain. She pointed to Ash, seated calmly at her heel. Knox believes this dog guarantees the story ends the way he wrote it. So we take Ash off the board, publicly retire him a second time. Announce I'm reassigned. We create a vacuum he can't calculate. Murmurs rippled. Tara, video conference square glowing on the side monitor, leaned into her webcam. Force him to surface early, before he locates the next audience. I like chaos theory. Hines sighed. But what about the child he's already picked? That, Maya said, is why we quietly embed a secondary canine team. No press, no uniforms, and why Ash and I don't disappear. We shadow him. She met Hines's gaze, silent, unpredictable, hunting the hunter. For a long moment, no one spoke. Rain ticked against the windows. Finally, Hines nodded once. Make the arrangements. Maya stepped into the cooling twilight, Ash trotting beside her. The plan felt like walking on thin ice in borrowed boots. But every instinct said it was the only way to seize narrative control. She knelt, hooking Ash's leash to a low branch so she could adjust the sling bag of new surveillance gear. Wind rolled through the parking lot, carrying the scent of damp asphalt and something sweeter, almost chemical. She looked up. A child's kite, bright yellow, cartoon dog printed on its face, lay folded on her windshield. No note, no thumbtack, just polyester rippling in the breeze, like a flag of surrender. Or invitation. She unfolded a corner. Along the wooden spar, someone had written in neat, pencil-thin strokes, "A sky without dogs is only weather." L. Ash growled, deep and resonant, the sound vibrating through her bones. She crumpled the kite into an evidence bag, heart pounding. Knox had already adapted. The game had moved again. But this time, so had they. Maya unclipped Ash, met his steady gaze, and felt a fierce clarity settle where fear had lived all day. He thinks we'll chase. Let's teach him what happens when the dog leads. Ash's ears tipped forward. He barked once, sharp, sure, and they disappeared into the coming night. Two steel cabinets stretched beneath flickering fluorescent tubes, humming like tired bees. Dust motes floated in slanted morning light, and each drawer Maya pulled seemed to sigh. She had been here for 3 hours already. Ash curled at her feet as though guarding the past itself. Around them, cardboard banker boxes towered like narrow city blocks, labeled by year and dispatch code. The stale scent of old paper mingled with metal oxide from decades-old microfilm canisters. Maya flipped another logbook onto the desk, its spine cracked and brittle. 2018, night calls, October to December, Halloween season, pranks, noise complaints, teenagers experimenting with courage after curfew. The perfect place for a predator to hide a rehearsal. She skimmed columns of 10 codes, eyes stinging. Domestic disputes, loose livestock, suspicious vehicles, ordinary rural static. Then a line, almost swallowed by the page's crease. 10-29-18, 23-14. Caller, Wilkes L. Location, Old Logging Spur, South Cedar Hollow. Nature, children's laughter, dog howling in woods. Disposition, 10-96, prank. No units dispatched, call volume high. Maya's breath cooled in her chest. 2 nights before Halloween, South Cedar Hollow. Only a few miles from where she and Ash had found the plastic crate and rusted padlock weeks ago. She traced the pen stroke of the dispatcher's note, imagining the shrug that must have accompanied it. Wild imaginations, coyote yips, bored kids, no follow-up. She set the logbook aside, thumb pressed hard on the page to keep her place, and opened the statewide audio archive on the workstation's dinosaur of a computer. Most calls from that period had been automatically purged, but rural agencies often forgot to delete their backups. With a prayer to outdated policy, she typed the call ID scrawled in the margin. The file existed. 1 kilobyte per second of cautionary tale. She clicked play. Static crackled, then a breathless female voice. Yes, dispatcher? I'm sorry if this is nothing, but I'm up at the fire tower and I can hear kids laughing. Real late, and there's a dog, big one, howling weird, like it's talking to the kids. The dispatcher, polite but harried, reassured her they'd log it. Then the call ended. 37 seconds that no one took seriously. Maya closed her eyes. The dog always comes. She pressed print, slid the page into a sleeve, and knelt to Ash. He was rehearsing you even then, she whispered, scratching the soft fur beneath his collar. His ears flicked. The low whine in his throat felt like agreement, or except hunters and kids telling campfire stories. Maya gathered the printout, the logbook, and a folded county map she'd unearthed from a drawer labeled obsolete. The spur road snaked past clear-cut ridges into a scrub pine basin, isolated, one way in, one out. A perfect stage. No one would visit at midnight, 3 days before Halloween. She stood. I need any additional incident codes within a 3-mile radius of that location, 2017 to present. Noise, trespass, animal control, anything. And I'll need the property owner's last contact information. Polanski raised an eyebrow. You expecting legal trouble? Just expecting someone who thinks no one's listening. Pine silhouettes blurred past the cruiser windows. Clouds dragged low enough to snag on the ridgelines, threatening rain. Maya dialed Tara Hale's secure line, speakerphone crackly. Tara, it's me. Got a lead. Dispatch call South Cedar Hollow, October 29th, 2018. Children's laughter, large dog howl. Logged as prank. Timestamp? Tara asked, keys clacking. 2314. No response unit. 2 nights before Halloween. Cross-referencing. A pause. Interesting. That's 48 hours after Knox's final foster application was denied in Jefferson County. You went off-grid a month later. Anger tightened Maya's jaw. So his first full performance might have been out here, where nobody showed up. Meaning he learned he needed the right bait, Tara said. A child with a guarantee of pursuit. Maya's thoughts jumped to Jenny's shoe, Micah's blank stare, Jonah whispering the dog would come. And he refined it until the story always ended the same. Tara's voice softened. Be careful, Whitlock. You poked the playwright before opening night, and he might change the script in blood. I'm counting on it, Maya said, disconnecting. Ash shifted, nose to the AC vent. His ears pricked as though he already smelled the memory of laughter on the wind. The spur road gate hung open, chains severed by bolt cutters not yet rusted. Muddy tire gouges curved into shadow. Maya parked at the verge, checked her sidearm, and shouldered a pack. Evidence kit, camera, first aid, and the notebook labeled Lacey. "Track," she told Ash. He bounded ahead into knee-high grass, favoring his right leg but determined. Pines crowded overhead, dimming the light to a mottled dusk. Within minutes, the world shrank to the pulse in Maya's ears, and the soft panting of the dog who always came. At 400 yards, Ash veered left, nose skimming leaf litter. He stopped at a ring of stones blackened by old fire, weeds pushing through charcoal. Nearby, Bob scanned for other traces and saw faint scratch marks on a sapling. Parallel grooves at knee height, as though a small hand had clawed at the bark. Ash barked once, short, urgent. He stood at the entrance to a narrow game trail descending toward a dark ravine. Maya's radio hissed with sudden interference, voices merging into static, then fading. She twisted the knob. Nothing but white noise. Knox's kingdom, she thought, where signals died and stories breathed. She tightened Ash's lead. "We keep going," she whispered, "because somewhere down that ravine, 4 years old and still echoing, children's laughter might yet linger in the trees, waiting for the dog who is finally, deliberately, on his way." The game trail fell away beneath their boots, narrower than a deer path, half swallowed by fern and bramble. Rain-slick pine needles turned the descent treacherous, but Ash moved with an assurance that made the slope feel deliberate, as if gravity itself deferred to his nose. Maya trusted his rhythm, the pause, the intake of air, the quick pivot to verify something she would never smell. 30 yards down, the forest lulled into a basin where light hardly pooled. The canopy knit so tight the air tasted like loam kept in a jar. Maya's foot slipped on wet duff. She steadied herself on a cedar trunk, breathing the sharp resin. Ahead, Ash froze, tail out, one paw lifted, a statue cut from breath and tension. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. He answered by lowering his paw and angling right, disappearing behind a tangle of salao. Maya pushed through, branches smacking her shoulders, and emerged into a clearing no larger than an average living room. In its center squatted a wooden shed, walls silvered by age, roof dipped like a tired spine. Ivy crawled across the planks, but the padlock on the door gleamed new, steel unclouded by rust. Ash circled once, nose pressed to the jamb. He whined, soft, urgent, and glanced back at Maya, eyes bright with the same plea she'd seen when he located the camper. "All right," she breathed. She drew bolt cutters from her pack, jaws biting through the shackle with a dull thunk that rang too loud in the muffled grove. The door creaked inward. Damp earth exhaled from the dark. She swept her flashlight. Immediately the beam found plastic jugs of water, labels pristine, beads of condensation still clinging. A rolled sleeping pad, its foam unmarred. A pile of flannel blankets, neatly folded, knelt beside him, gloved fingers lifting the fox.
Its fabric smelled of dryer sheets and something faintly antiseptic. Hospital clean. A tag dangled from one ragged ear. Property of Lacey.
Her pulse jumped. Lacey Jordan. The 2016 case Tara had flagged, missing on a family road trip. Last seen clutching a plush fox her grandmother had sewn. Maya placed the toy in an evidence bag, sealing away whatever hope or horror clung to its fur. She turned her light over the room again and noticed scuffs on the plank floor, parallel tracks where crates had been slid aside to make space, perhaps for small sleeping bodies. In dustier corners, tiny shoe prints overlay boot treads, too large to be coincidence. A lesson space, she thought. A rehearsal hall. Near the back wall, a spiral notebook rested atop a sealed plastic bin. She opened to the first page, felt-tip sketches of a stick-figure girl holding a fox, standing under a crooked tree. Above her hovered a bubble letter, D, and beside it, a crudely drawn dog, triangular ears, long body. Underneath, a shaky caption, "He says the dog remembers where I'm hiding." Maya swallowed hard and flipped forward. Page after page repeated the motif. Child, dog, letter D. Sometimes the dog sat outside a box. Sometimes it stared at a moon. Every drawing framed anticipation. The hush before footfall. She backed out of the shed and inhaled the cold forest air, fighting the claustrophobia of someone else's script. Ash stood in the doorway as guardian, soft growl vibrating through the boards. Maya keyed her radio, static spitting. "Control, this is Whitlock. I need a forensic team at my GPS. Abandoned structure with fresh childcare supplies, possible holding site. Marked evidence. Securing perimeter now." Only hiss returned. The ravine swallowed reception. She swore under her breath and switched to satellite ping. Text only, hoping the message would cue once she regained line of sight. She scanned the clearing perimeter. No cigarette butts, no food wrappers. Knox left nothing indulgent. Every supply item served survival and silence. He expected to retrieve these children whole, fear-tempered, but not broken. But why the fox? A token to preserve identity? Or a lure? Proof he'd been studying their rooms, their bedtime talismans. Ash bristled beside her, hackles rippling. He faced uphill, nose twitching in rapid staccato. Maya followed his line of sight up the slope, where a sliver of sky glimmered through branches. For a breath, nothing moved. Then a single pine cone tumbled down, bouncing twice before settling. Gravity? Or what?
"Yeah," Maya whispered, palm on his shoulder. "He was here."
She pictured Knox standing among the firs, serene, observing dog and handler discover the next stage prop, mapping their responses, refining his narrative. But something shifted in Maya's chest, an ember of defiance. Every clue he planted drew them closer, not just to his victims, but to him. Ash wasn't following Knox's breadcrumbs anymore. He was charting a path that would close the distance between myth and arrest. She scratched behind the shepherd's ear. "You let us first, as always." Ash nudged her hand, tail giving one quiet wag. Maya snapped photos, logged GPS, then started back toward the cruiser, evidence bags rustling in her pack. The toy fox's button eyes pressed through the plastic, gazing behind them as though watching for the man who believed children were pieces in a private story, waiting for the dog that would come. This time, Maya vowed, the dog would arrive sooner, and the story would end differently. Maya stood once more in the musky hush of the shed, rain pinging the tin roof like nervous fingertips. She had returned after the forensic van clawed its way back up the ridge road, compelled by a tug in her gut that something still waited amid the blankets and water jugs. Ash padded beside her, nose low, tail stiff, a compass needle refusing to settle. The wooden crate where the plush fox had rested now sat open, its lid leaning against a stack of folded tarps. Inside, beneath spare batteries and shrink-wrapped granola bars, a corner of black plastic glinted. Maya brushed debris aside and lifted a cassette recorder, heavy in her palm, one of those dictation models popular before cell phones devoured them. Fresh AA batteries were taped to its side, a guarantee the message would play. A strip of masking tape ran across the speaker grill, hand-labeled in neat block letters, Instructions. Her thumb hovered over play. She met Ash's gaze, silent consultation, then pressed down. The machine clicked, hiss filled the shed like breath through teeth. Knox's voice, calm, measured.
Hello again, little ones.
A pause, as though waiting for an answer he knew wouldn't come.
Remember what we practiced. We don't run. We keep our voices inside. Fear is loud. Courage is quieter. Breathe. Count 4 heartbeats.
Maya's spine chilled. This was no casual reassurance. It was a lesson plan.
Now, touch your friend's hand. That's the anchor.
She pictured Jenny and Lacey, tiny fingers clasped in the half-light of some hidden room.
Listen, the forest has 2 stories.
The promise. Click. The tape ended, reels spun in silence until Maya hit stop. Wind shuddered through loose boards. She realized her jaw was clenched so tightly her molars ached. He's not just rehearsing, she whispered. He's teaching them to be trackable. She turned to Ash. He conditions them to stay put, quiet, leave scent pools. He's training the victims the way we train you. Ash lowered his head, ears flattening as if the realization wounded him personally. Maya flipped the recorder, pried open the battery bay. The cells were brand new, stamped with a manufacture date barely 2 months old. He'd been here recently, refreshing supplies, updating curriculum. Her eyes roamed the shed anew and caught details she'd missed. Tick-mark height chart carved into a post, a laminated card thumbtacked above the blankets, printed with simple icons. Tree, water bottle, quiet mouth, dog, each accompanied by a single word in block letters. A pictograph instruction sheet comprehensible even to pre-literate kids. Indoctrination 101. Anger sluiced through her exhaustion. Knox wasn't stealing children on impulse, he was molding compliance, turning instinct to flee into ritual, to wait. Every taped message, every drawing on his walls, every object in these kits etched obedience to the promise deeper into small psyches. Ash nudged her elbow, drawing her attention to a faint scent trail leading behind the crate. She slid it aside, revealing scratch marks on the plank, shallow but deliberate, spelling 3 letters gouged by something sharp. R-K-9. Her breath caught, not a signature, an invocation. He left these initials like breadcrumbs for the dog, knowing Ash would scent the impressions of metal or wood. It was praise or provocation or both. She photographed, bagged, logged. Then she hit record on the cassette device, spoke evenly. Evidence log, Cedar Hollow site. Subject Luther D. Knox is conditioning abductees to remain stationary for canine retrieval. Audio proof obtained. Victims positioned as bait for specific responding teams. Motive shifts from abduction to controlled rescue scenario. Recommending psychological operations approach. Anticipate performative escalation. She stopped, tucked the recorder into her rucksack beside the fox, and zipped it with deliberate finality. Outside, the late-day light had dimmed to pewter. Mist threaded through cedar trunks. As they stepped into it, Ash paused, nose tilted skyward, breathing a world she couldn't parse. Suddenly he barked, short, guttural, then looked east, downhill toward the basin. Maya followed the line of his gaze and spotted a strip of red fabric tied around a branch, fluttering like a signal flag. Approaching, she saw it was a child narrative. "Not anymore," she muttered, stuffing the ribbon into an evidence bag. Ash pressed against her thigh, warm and solid, the answer to every whispered myth. She scratched his ruff. "He wants you to finish his story. Let's write a different ending." They climbed toward the ridge, the forest folding behind them like pages turning. Above, crows wheeled in wordless congress, as if carrying warnings ahead. Maya's radio finally caught a signal. Tara's voice burst through the static. "Whitlock, forensic ETA 20 minutes. You all right out there?" Maya keyed the mic, eyes on Ash negotiating the slope. "We're moving. And Tara, he's not hunting kids. He's schooling them. Pass it on." "Copy," Tara said, voice tightening. "Lessons over." Maya clicked off, quickened her pace. Behind her, the shed waited in mute rehearsal. But its script, the mantra drilled into frightened hearts, had met the dog it prophesied. And this time, the dog wasn't coming to rescue. He was coming to end the class. The overhead lights in the evidence room were softer than the flickering fluorescents in records, warm enough to almost fool Maya into thinking she wasn't cataloging trauma. The long table was a quiet battlefield, dozens of crayon drawings, each one tagged with the nickname of a missing child. Rainbows, stick dogs, campers, all sealed in plastic sleeves. Innocence weaponized. Ash, her canine partner, lay near the door, ears twitching, even in sleep. Maya reached for another envelope, expecting more of the same. But what she pulled out made her pause. Not crayon, pencil. A girl, maybe 10, drawn in haunting grayscale, stood at the forest's edge, caught between watchtower trees and an empty clearing. Her eyes tunneled inward, hollow and ancient. At the bottom margin, block letters whispered, "I was found, but I'm still here." Maya's breath misted the plastic sleeve. The words shook her. Found, but still trapped. She flipped the page. No name, just smudges of graphite. Left-handed, deliberate strokes. She checked the tag. Recovered at Crow residence. Unlabeled. She aligned it beside other evidence, crayon sketches from Jenny, a rescued 6-year-old. One of Jenny's last pages showed a hesitant forest in pencil. The style matched. Too advanced for a child that young, unless time had passed in captivity. Or unless the artist wasn't Jenny. One cold case pinged in Maya's memory. Lauren Wren Bailey. Coordinates. The message. "I was found" wasn't despair. It was a direction. And it led to a postcard. Valley Pines. Maya retrieved it again, the message mocking her. "You're getting closer. Bring the dog. LDK." She ran her thumb along the stamp's edge, too thick. Peeling it back revealed a folded scrap, coordinates, and a single word, Tenny. Tennyville, Northern Oregon, off the grid. She and Ash hit the road. The town's only gas station had no signal. Locals warned her off. Washed-out fire roads, no service, no reason to go. But the forest had never scared her. The man behind the drawings did. The fire road ended at a rusted gate. Beyond, a trail swallowed by moss and silence. Ash led the way, nose tracking what only dogs sense, memories folded into bark and wind. Half a mile in, the trees opened around an earthen mound. Embedded in the hill was a circular concrete hatch, old, unmarked, unlocked. Ash circled it, tail low, alert. Maya braced and opened it with a groan of rust and grit. Cold air exhaled from below, damp and metallic, like a basement hiding childhood nightmares. Inside was a survival cache, food, books, mylar blankets. But no children. Just a hand-drawn map, duct-taped to a tub. You are safe. The dog's path. A sound clacked above. The hatch slammed shut, locked. Ash growled, not afraid, focused. Maya's mic crackled with dead static. No signal, no escape. Not unless they made one. Working by touch and instinct, Maya and Ash pried loose a crate slat, scraped mortar, and dug toward a crack that smelled of air and freedom. Finally, a cinder block gave way. Behind it, an old drainage pipe. Ash wriggled first. Maya followed. They emerged, gasping in daylight. Alive. This wasn't a trap. It was a test. They climbed higher, leaving a message on a tree near the hatch. Dog found door. Below it, R. Backlong, K9. The forest welcomed them back without applause, but the clues didn't stop. A second hatch, deeper in, led to a dry bunker with a child's sleeping bag, a cassette player, and silence thick with memory. Maya pressed play. A man's voice, calm, cultured, familiar. That's what dogs do. They remember the ones no one else can. Then a child's voice. "Will he come back?" The man replied, "Not for me, but for you. You're the kind that brings them." Ash let out a low whine, pressing toward the wall. Recognition. Maya knelt beside him. "You've been here before, haven't you?" No map this time, but paw prints, tiny ones. Forward. The girl in graphite had whispered her truth, and the dog, who remembered what the world forgot, was still listening, still searching, still bringing them home. The parking lot had surrendered to the forest. Pine needles blanketed cracked asphalt, and moss crept across the glass of the old ticket booth. The rusted sign overhead still read Valley Pines Family Fun Center, though the U in fun dangled like a forgotten joke. Maya stepped from the cruiser, one hand resting on Ash's harness. The German shepherd moved beside her, his limp more pronounced in the cold, but his eyes alert, always alert. The mural across the gate, cartoon animals waving at laughing children, felt grotesque now. A dog in a sheriff's hat grinned from faded paint. Maya whispered, "I came here once, with a group home." Ash didn't react, but his posture changed. The past stirred beneath them both. The chain on the gate was looped shut, but not locked. A red ribbon fluttered from the metal, fresh, deliberate, an invitation. Inside, the fun center had collapsed into rot and rust. Tilted rides, broken booths, a carousel half swallowed by kudzu. But the bones of joy were still visible, echoes of powdered sugar and children's laughter, brittle as old film. Ash sniffed the air and darted forward, not tracking scent, but something deeper. Maya followed through the ruined arcade. A banner still hung from the rafters. Foster Family Day, sponsored by Heartbridge Homes. She remembered the green shirts, the cotton candy, the illusion of safety. So had the others. Jenny Cartwright, Mika Reyes, others with no endings. Valley Pines had been a hunting ground. Ash stopped at the carousel. On the control box was a faded photo taped carefully. Maya leaned in. It was her, 8 years old, cotton candy in hand, smiling. In the blurred background, a tall man in a gray coat. On the back of the photo, scrawled in blue ink, "You've always been good at following clues, but this one followed you." Ash growled low. Not fear, recognition. Behind the carousel, Maya found it, drawn in chalk on concrete. A girl with long hair and hollow eyes stood beside a dog, a German shepherd. Beneath, "He always comes back." Maya knelt, her voice caught. "He's been watching me, all this time." Ash stood sentinel. The forest listened. They pressed deeper into the park, past the ruins of popcorn stands and a rusting Ferris wheel. Ash led them to a shack, hidden behind ivy-covered fencing. A crooked sign read, "Lost and Found." The pad sweeping. Behind a stack of boxes, a blanket shifted. She crouched, a small face emerged, pale, wide-eyed, tangled blonde hair framing her like seaweed. "Jenny?" Maya whispered. The girl nodded, voice soft as leaves. "He said the dog would come. Not someone. Not help. The dog. Ash." Maya's throat clenched. She eased off her jacket and wrapped it around the child. "You're safe now." Jenny didn't cry, but her eyes shimmered, too deep for 6 years old. "How long have you been here?" Maya asked, lifting her gently. Jenny didn't answer. She simply leaned into Maya's shoulder like she'd been waiting for this exact moment, this exact rescue. Outside, Ash whined, a soft, low sound. When Jenny reached out to touch his muzzle, her fingers moved with uncanny familiarity, as if this had all happened before, in dreams or worse, design. "He said I had to be still," she whispered, "quiet, so the dog could hear me." Maya's heart cracked. Knox hadn't just hidden them, he'd trained them, conditioned them to wait, to believe not in rescue, but in the dog. Jenny clutched the fox tightly. "He said the dog always finds the ones people forget." Maya swallowed back the storm in her chest. She opened her radio. "This is Deputy Whitlock. I have a positive ID, Jenny Cartwright, alive. Requesting immediate medical at Valley Pines, North Quadrant, lost and found shack." Ash sat beside her, watching. Still. In the dim shack light, Maya spotted something scratched into the wall, etched by a child's hand using a coin or nail. "We don't cry. The dog hears better when it's quiet." A tremor passed through her. This wasn't neglect, this was programming. Ash had been turned into a myth, a savior stitched into obedience and silence. And Knox had written the script. When first responders arrived, Maya passed Jenny to a medic. The girl didn't let go of the fox. Her other hand clung to Ash's fur until the very last second. Maya turned back toward the carousel and froze. Tire tracks, fresh, still damp. 2 straight lines in the dirt, boot prints beside them, sharp, deep, steel-toed, size 12. The same ones from the trail cam. He had been here. Maya scanned the trees. Wind rustled leaves, but nothing moved, nothing human. Then she saw it, a note nailed to a beam behind the funhouse. She pulled it free. Cream paper, clean edges. "I never wanted to break you. I wanted you to finish it." Block letters, neat, deliberate. Maya read it twice. He hadn't run out of fear. He'd waited to see her arrive, to see Ash lead her, to see the chapter close. And then he'd vanished. Ash stood at her side, gaze fixed into the woods. A forest, a big dog, a little girl holding his tail. Behind them in the shadows, a man with no face. The caption read, "He watches to see if the dog remembers." Maya stood slowly. This wasn't a cat-and-mouse game. It was a lesson, a demonstration. Knox didn't believe in justice. He believed in closure, in silence, in obedience, in faith. And he had made Ash, this living, breathing, loyal soul, a central figure in that gospel. Maya looked down at him. Ash nudged her hand gently, eyes steady, waiting. "He wants me to follow," she whispered. But now she wasn't chasing a killer. She was following a man who thought he was teaching, a puppeteer, and she was walking into the final act of a play he'd written, long before she knew it began. Ash's tail twitched once, then they moved side by side into the woods. The medical tent was quiet now. A lantern's low hum cast soft shadows across the canvas walls, and the only sounds were the rhythmic beeps of a monitor and the slow, even breathing of a girl who hadn't cried once since she was rescued. Jenny sat on a cot, swallowed by a wool blanket too big for her frame. Her legs swung slightly, like a pendulum marking time. Ash lay on the floor between her and Maya, alert but still, his presence grounding the space. Jenny's fingers brushed his fur from time to time, not to comfort him, but to remind herself he was real. Maya sat across from her, careful not to intrude. "Jenny," she said softly, "why didn't you try to leave?" The girl blinked slowly. "He said we weren't lost, just paused." Maya's breath caught. "Paused?" Jenny nodded. "He told stories, said the world hadn't forgotten us. It just paused us, until someone was ready, until the dog came." Maya looked at Ash. He didn't move, but his eyes tracked every word. "He never hurt you?" Maya asked. "No," Jenny said. "He said hurting was for people who stopped listening." Maya's heart twisted. This wasn't a child recovering from terror. This was someone who had been groomed into stillness. "Did you ever see him?" Jenny shook her head. "Not really. He didn't want to be in the story. He said he was just the page-turner." And then, quietly, "He was just here, I think, to check on me." Maya's spine stiffened. "I don't know if it was real," Jenny said, "but he always knew how to make shadows feel like doors." The words chilled Maya. This wasn't just about captivity, it was choreography. Knox hadn't abducted Jenny. Families loved loudly, who searched beyond reason. He picked children whose echoes would carry, and more than that, he picked those who would look for them. "He said the story isn't over," Jenny added. "This is just the middle." That night, Maya sat alone in the station, a desk lamp casting long shadows across the files she'd spread like bones. Cold cases, missing children, all dismissed as runaways, all with one strange, impossible thing in common. Someone never stopped looking. She pulled out her notepad. Jenny's intake form mentioned something offhand, a line she'd spoken before disappearing. "If I get lost, the dog will come." And it wasn't just Jenny. Jonah had whispered it. Micah had believed it. Ash let out a breath beside the heater. She checked her own field notes. A decade ago, she'd volunteered on a missing persons search, her first canine, Bear, by her side. It had ended in heartbreak, but now she remembered a man at that site, quiet, helpful, knew the woods better than anyone. No name, just a note in the report. Tall guy helped grid Zone 3. Knew things. She dug through trail cam footage from the day Jonah and Micah were found. There he was, half-shadowed, red clay on his boots, watching, always just out of reach. Knox hadn't just been orchestrating the children's rescues, he'd been composing a story, choosing not just the victims, but the rescuers. He was testing who would follow the rhythm he laid down. Maya stared at Ash. He hadn't been trained for this, but somehow he had always known, always heard what others couldn't. "Knox doesn't abduct," she wrote in her notebook. He composes. The envelope was waiting on the counter the next morning. No return address, just her name in black block print. Ash growled the moment she touched it. Inside, a single Polaroid, Maya and Ash, captured mid-step in the woods, framed perfectly, no blur, taken from 30 feet away. She flipped it over. You were always the one I couldn't break. But maybe I can finish the story now. No signature, but she didn't need one. The handwriting matched the cassette label from the hollow. Knox. Still watching. Still choosing. Still writing. She stared at the photo. It wasn't of her. It was of Ash. The angle, the light, the moment, like someone had captured a monument. Not a dog, a guardian. The one thing Knox could never control. She pinned the Polaroid next to a drawing recovered from the woods, a girl with hollow eyes, standing at the edge of trees, under the caption, "I was found, but I'm still here." The cases were lining up now. Each child had been found further out than the last, each location more buried, more forgotten. Knox wasn't hiding. He was spiraling outward, marking each chapter with silence and a story only a dog could hear. She pulled out the tape marked M. Reyes, 011213, the same voice.
His ears twitched. He didn't bark. He understood. Outside, wind pressed softly against the siding, like trees whispering secrets only dogs could hear. Maya whispered back, "I won't let you finish this your way." Ash blinked once and waited, because the story wasn't over. The sun had dipped behind the ridge when they stepped out of the cruiser. Gold light spread across the community center parking lot, catching the edges of old paper hearts in the window, leftovers from some forgotten Valentine's Day. No one had bothered to take them down. They looked faded now, like promises whispered by children who'd grown up too fast. Inside, the lights were dim. No reporters, no crowd, just a few chairs, bottled water, and a woman standing by the door, hands trembling, as she wrung a sweater that wasn't even hers. Lena Cartwright hadn't spoken publicly since her daughter vanished in 2019. She'd moved, changed jobs, given up on prayer and police in equal measure. But she hadn't changed her number. When Maya called, quiet voice, no promises, just facts, Lena had whispered one word. Alive? Now she was here, waiting. Ash entered first, his gait slow and deliberate, like he knew the space needed reverence. Then Maya stepped in, holding Jenny's hand gently, as if it were something sacred. The girl walked cautiously, clutching a plush fox, tattered but whole. Her wide eyes scanned the room, no words. Lena dropped the sweater, took a single step forward, then another. Jenny saw her. There was a moment, weightless and suspended, and then the air broke with a small voice. "Mommy!" She ran. Lena caught her mid-air, collapsing to her knees, arms clutching that small frame with the kind of desperation that lives only in people who've tried to forget how it feels to hope. They sobbed, not loudly, not theatrically, just quiet, shaking grief, the kind you breathe, not cry. Ash stood close, tail low, eyes watchful, guarding, bearing witness. Jenny turned in her mother's arms, eyes falling on him. She crawled to Ash, pressed her face into his fur and whispered, "He remembered." Her voice was thin, barely used, but it carried like a hymn across the entire room. Maya knelt beside her, eyes soft, hands still dirty from the forest and hatch doors. "He always does," Maya said. Ash didn't move. He simply closed his eyes and let the little girl stay pressed against him. For a moment, time held its breath, because something had been returned, not just a child, but belief, that someone was still looking, that someone could still be found. Jenny pulled back and kissed Ash's snout. Then she said something that made Maya freeze beneath. He had come, not just for Jenny, but for all of them. Because dogs like Ash didn't forget. They carried the scent of the missing in their bones. Jenny turned to Maya. "Will you find the others?" Maya blinked. "Others?" She nodded. "There's still one. The boy who never cried. He told me stories through the wall." Lena gasped. Ash lifted his head. Maya didn't promise. She just looked at Jenny, then down at Ash, and said, "We're not done." That night, after Jenny was safe and asleep, Maya sat on the porch of the center, with a cold mug in hand. She didn't drink, just listened. Ash lay beside her, eyes open, watching the tree line. He hadn't stopped, not since they arrived, not since Jenny was found. "You smell him, don't you?" Maya whispered. Ash didn't blink, and Maya felt it too, like static under the skin, a presence that wasn't hiding, just near. Knox wasn't fleeing, he was waiting, watching, just like always. A flicker between the trees caught her eye. Too slow for an animal, too sure for the wind. Ash didn't chase it, he just stood, watching. And Maya knew this wasn't over. It had never been about Jenny alone. She remembered the tapes, the notes, the phrase repeated in whisper after whisper. "The dog will come." Knox had built something more than a pattern. He had built a prophecy, a sequence, not to harm, not even to flee, but to be understood. Maya ran her fingers over the old scar on Ash's shoulder. Scar tissue from a rescue long ago. She remembered the boy in the well, his voice. There was someone else down there. He told me the dog would find me. And Ash had believed him first. Now Maya looked back to the woods. "We'll finish this," she said, "but on our terms." The wind stilled, and in that stillness, she almost heard it again. Not a word, but a wait. "The dog will come." Ash stood, not barking, not rushing, just moving with purpose. Maya stood too. No flashlight, no backup, just the sound of her boots on pine needles, and the shape of Ash ahead of her, not leading, walking beside, because some stories don't end in trials or confessions. They end in knowing, in being seen. And somewhere, deep within the trees, a man was waiting, not to be caught, but to be understood. And the dog was already on his way. They stacked higher on Maya's desk now, old paper with creases worn thin from fingers that had turned pages 1,000 times. Photocopied school portraits. Lists of explain. There was always something that stitched them together, a thread, a whisper, a shadow that returned. Ash was curled near her boots now, paws twitching in sleep. Maybe he dreamed of water trails and the rustle of crates, maybe of Jenny's hug, or maybe, just maybe, of the ones they hadn't found yet. "He's still out there," Maya said softly, more to herself than anyone else. She didn't need a reply. Ash's breathing remained steady, but the radio crackled faintly on the shelf behind her, static humming like a memory. Somewhere, another voice might still be waiting. Another child, whispering into the dark. He said the dog would come, and Ash would, he always did. The station's back wall bore a new bulletin board now, not the kind for press releases or bolos, but something quieter. Handwritten notes, newspaper clippings, drawings taped gently in the corners. Jenny's sketch was there, recreated in charcoal this time,
The girl with hollow eyes standing at the edge of the forest, but with one difference, a dog beside her, strong, watchful. Someone had added a caption beneath it in soft, uneven script. He comes for those no one else remembers. Maya didn't ask who wrote it. Maybe one of the volunteers, maybe one of the parents who still showed up each month, even if there was no new lead. Maybe a survivor who hadn't spoken yet. Or maybe it didn't matter. It was true either way. The tape room was locked now, sealed and catalogued. But sometimes, late at night, Maya would walk past it and pause, just long enough to remember the static hum of that voice. The one that said, "The dog always comes." Not with fanfare, not with orders, but with quiet, instinctive certainty. That's what haunted her most about Knox. Not just what he did, but how deliberately he chose. He didn't steal at random, he selected. Children whose absence would trigger someone, and those someones were always the kind who didn't stop. Foster mothers who never gave up, teachers who filed one last report, and canine handlers who knew the difference between bark and silence. He was building something with them, through them, a story made of questions, a pattern traced not by guilt, but by endurance. Maya had once asked herself what the point of it all was. Why someone would teach children to wait, not scream. Why he left trails instead of traps. But now she understood. Knox was trying to write something across time, and every time he tried to break the ones who might read it, Ash was there.
Every time he tried to break the story, she whispered, Ash was there, and the story kept going. In the spring, Jenny came back. Not for long, just a visit.
Gently, on the drawing. No training taught him that. They never caught Knox. He became a myth in some circles, a cautionary tale in others, but Maya stopped chasing the man. She chased what he'd left instead. And Ash? He chased the silence. Every time they stepped into a new town, followed a new tip, walked another trail where no one else heard footsteps, Ash would pause, then turn, and Maya would follow. That was the legacy. Not arrests, not headlines, but this silent promise, kept in the thump of a tail or the tilt of a nose in the wind, that someone still came, that no one was forgotten, that in the stillness a dog always remembered. Sometimes it's not the words we remember, but the silence between them. The quiet companionship of a dog lying at our feet, the look in their eyes that tells us we're safe, loved, and never alone. Stories like these remind us just how deeply animals touch our lives. German Shepherds in particular carry a kind of loyalty that doesn't ask for attention. It just stays. Through storms, through loss, through the moments we think no one sees us, they do. If you've ever felt that kind of bond, or you're hoping to build it with your own dog, there's a beautiful little resource I came across that might speak to your heart. It's not a product, just a place filled with small, meaningful ideas for listening more, connecting better, and honoring the trust they give so freely. You don't have to click anything. Just if the story stayed with you, and you're wondering how to give your dog what they've already given you, love without condition, I think you'll find something there worth your time. Take care of them. They remember more than we think.